Welcome to 2819. I'm Sandra Dimez.
And I'm Brian Rohenbacher.
And we have a spacey show for you this week to help you prepare for alien stock. Oh, snap.
That's right. And this was originally the Raid Storm Area 51 event. It's been switched over, so don't go storm Area 51. I just want to put it out there. We're not telling you to do that. No. But in case you are talking to anyone that might be interested in aliens or alien stock, we want to get you prepared for that. Yeah. So we're going to be hearing from physicist and RTB visiting scholar Bijan Nemati, national security expert Mark Clark, and a few others.
Yeah, you know what? They're here to talk about all things aliens, including the possibility of life on other planets and government conspiracies surrounding Area 51.
Oh, it's going to be so good.
I know, I'm excited.
I haven't been this excited since I got to eat cake on TV.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah. Yes.
The cake was good.
It was. So before we jump into that, just want to invite all of you, if you're interested in supporting resources like this show, please visit reasons.org/2819.
And you know what? There's nothing quite as enticing as the thought of UFOs, aliens, and government secrets about extraterrestrials.
Yeah, and it seems like the public interest is only getting more intense. I mean, we have so many TV shows, movies, comic books, all kinds of stories on what lies beyond Earth.
And since this topic has been in the news so much lately, we want to be sure that you're equipped to explore answers to these theories and questions in a scientific and biblical way. That's why we created just for you the Are We Alone bundle.
That's right. And for a limited time, you can get Is There Life Out There?, Improbable Planet, and Lights in the Sky and Little Green Men for 51% off.
I see what you did there.
The 51, yeah. If you're interested in this deal, just go to shop.reasons.org and search for Are We Alone?
Well, now it's time to hear from philosopher and theologian Ken Samples. He's going to discuss whether alien encounters are real. Let's check it out.
Now it's time for RTB 101, where we discuss practical questions to help equip you to share your faith more effectively. And here to help me talk about alien encounters today is philosopher and theologian Kenneth Samples. Welcome, Ken.
Hi.
Always good to have you here. This is one of the more unusual topics that you're an expert in. But your classic book came out, I think, about almost 20 years ago now. Are we
2002, I think?
Yeah, so we're getting up there. Lights in the Sky and Little Green Men, that you co-authored with Hugh Ross and Mark Clark on this issue. And one of your chapters in there looks at this issue of contactee experiences.
Yes.
People might have heard the phraseology of encounters of the third kind.
Yeah.
This is where people actually have almost like real literal encounters with aliens. So let's talk about that, because some people might think that's completely not even on the table.
Yeah, you have what I would describe as kind of three UFO scenarios. You have people who are abducted, where they're actually captured, go through maybe an excruciating physical exam, and maybe later have reoccurring psychological trauma. Contactee movement is a little different in the sense that this is more rooted in kind of a religious element, where people get messages from aliens from outer space. This has a deep connection to the occult, to spiritism. The precursors to the contactee movement would see aliens within seances. And then you kind of have the broader category of UFO cults. So you have the abduction, which is almost always negative, the contactee, which is almost always spiritual and occultic, and then the religious element goes even further in religion and various ideas.
Well, that's very helpful. So there's kind of three different categories of these encounters. Now, in your book with Dr. Ross and Dr. Clark, you guys kind of lay out a general framework for understanding what we might call UFO experiences and this sort of thing. Maybe you can give us kind of a thumbnail of what that is.
Yeah, I think it's important to maybe think of three explanatory models, if you will. One of them would be what I would call the misidentified theory. That's where UFOs are not actual UFO beings, but the phenomenon is described as a misidentification of natural phenomena or human phenomena, aircrafts, whatever it may be. So the essential explanation is there's a deep misidentification. These aren't real UFO beings.
Natural explanation.
There are natural explanations, either psychological or phenomenological, if you will. A second interpretation is that these are extraterrestrial beings. These are real UFO beings. They are traveling from various parts and other galaxies, other parts of the universe. They have metallic crafts or whatever the construction of them is. So it would be an extraterrestrial. They are beings in our universe outside of our galaxy, maybe.
Okay.
A third one, and of course this is kind of where we move to, it would be what I would call the ultra-dimensional or extra-dimensional explanation, that there is a percentage, and we conclude the small percentage, but there are phenomena of UFO realities that are really not from this dimension. From a theological, spiritual perspective, we would see these as being potentially demonic. So 3 categories of interpretation or explanation.
So when we think about these extra-dimensional experiences, that's a small percentage of the experiences that people have. Most of them, your theory is that most of them have natural explanations, but there's a small percentage that don't seem to have a natural explanation.
That's exactly right. We would argue that maybe 99% of UFO experiences, sightings, encounters could be explained naturally. Maybe less than 1% cannot. And some of those, many of those have seemingly connections to an occult, spiritualistic point of view.
I'm wondering if there's any connection between these abduction experiences that people have and what you see as these kind of possibly demonic experiences with UFOs. Like, is that some of the data that supports that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fair-minded to say that anybody who has, or the vast majority of people who have UFO experiences, it is characterized similar to an occult type of experience, and very often it tends to be negative in terms, sometimes physically, often emotionally. And so the occult runs through the UFO phenomenon. So
the kind of the lasting impact of these abduction experiences can be quite traumatic and negative.
Very negative. Some people are deeply troubled. They have kind of post-traumatic stress type of experiences. Many times they are treated psychologically, or they become very interested in religion, but it's usually kind of a spiritism, a new age, occult, which from a Christian point of view would be very negative.
So for a non-Christian, if we're talking to non-Christians about these issues, could this almost be evidence of something beyond our universe? That how would we talk about this to our non-Christian friends?
Well, I know recently in the news there were naval aviators who were seeing what appear to be UFOs, and they described them as exhibiting characteristics that would have killed a human pilot. That is, the physics that they were undergoing, the gyrations or whatever it would be, would have killed physical human beings. This is one of the things that has led astronomers, others, to say there's something happening here, but it doesn't seem to fit with, the scientific understanding of physics. It seems more like a extra-dimensional or spiritual type of experience. And I think in a cautious, careful way, we can say that part of this phenomenon maybe is best explained as some kind of spiritual reality.
Very good. I'm sure people are going to be intrigued, so I want to encourage them to check out the book Lights in the Sky and Little Green Men. Next up, we're going to hear from visiting scholar Dr. Bijan Nemati, taking a closer look at the possibility of life on other planets. Let's check it out.
Bijan, one of the big questions of our time is the question, are we alone? Is life teeming in the universe, or is Earth unique in its capacity to support life? And you're an ideal person to ask this question. You're a physicist, you're a Christian, but you also are working to build the instruments that astronomers are using to search for extrasolar planets and life beyond our solar system. So my question to you is, are we alone? And what difference does that make to the Christian faith if we're not alone?
Great question. I guess I would answer it. First, I want to go back to the first part, which is that do we as Christians require that we be alone? Speaking as a Christian and from basically what the Bible tells us, we have no a priori commitment to being alone in this universe. God sovereignly could choose to create a multitude of planets, billions of planets with life of all kinds anywhere He wants. He is sovereign to do all of that. Nothing precludes Him from doing that. That is consistent with our Christian thinking. So if life is found on another planet, we would say, wonderful. Praise God, He created life somewhere else. However, I think at another level, there is this narrative that I think you hinted at, which is the narrative goes as to if we do see such life, it seems to undermine us being special. And I think that is a argument to say that there is some sort of a circumstantial evidence that could be mustered out of seeing a ubiquity of life on other planets that at its best is circumstantial. It is not really a hard statement. And it has a particularly hard time working when already we concede that, no, we don't concede, we actually assert that God could sovereignly create anywhere He wants to. So it's not going to show anything. But then we can ask the question at a different level. We can ask the question from the standpoint of the requirements of life for other planets and say, what do we expect? Just from what we understand of biology, what it needs, what the planet needs to do so that it could be hospitable to biology. And when we do that exercise, and that exercise has been done now for many, many decades, and it's becoming more and more sophisticated in the field of astrobiology, we find that the conditions for habitability are very exacting to a large extent. And so then you have what that does is that then we have a priori estimates of just statistically what we should expect in terms of life in other planets, especially habitability of planets for life. And then you can get to a situation, and I think we're well on our way to getting there, where we already know statistically that those things are extremely unlikely. If that continues at this rate, and already I would say statistically various estimates, estimates vary, but I think I have a spreadsheet of my own, and I would say that if you're very, very generous, you would not expect an Earth-like planet around a sun-like star in 10,000 Milky Ways. In other words, just very, very basic requirements ends up probability of 10 to the minus 4 for our existence here. That means, of course, that now if you go searching in other planets around us for life like us, that will not be statistically what you expect.
If you'd like to hear more from this guest, visit reasons.org and search Bijan Nemati. Now it's time for Culture Talk. This is the segment where we discuss culturally relevant topics and how you can use them to start conversations about your faith. I'm joined today with national security expert Mark Clark. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
We're going to talk about a kind of funny topic, something that came up months ago, and it was Storm Area 51. And my goodness, it was so popular. People were ready to Naruto run into Area 51. We got some excellent memes from that, right?
We got a lot of good ones. Keanu Reeves, Naruto running. I've never seen it before.
Keanu Reeves? Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just been fascinating because it reminds us how fascinated people are by UFOs and extraterrestrials and how convinced they are that Area 51 houses top secret aliens and UFOs. But as a national security expert, what do you know? What can you speak into as far as what is there at Area 51?
Sure. Area 51's part is called Groom Lake. It's a dry lake bed in Nevada, kind of north of Tonopah and northwest of Las Vegas. It's a huge area. The actual training range for The Nevada Test and Training Range, they call it, for the U.S. Air Force, encompasses 2.9 million acres of land in that area. So Groom Lake's part of it, Area 51's part. But they control 5,000 square miles of space overhead where it's restricted. No one can enter or leave. And then another 7,000 miles they can work with commercial aircraft. And so Area 51 has been popularized by different movies, Independence Day, a lot of the Stargate series and things like that. And it's picked up on things from the 40s. You know, we had a recovered alien ship and a recovered alien body, and some of our technologies reverse engineered. It's more mundane than that. They do aerospace testing. Our U-2 aircraft came from there. The F-117, the stealth fighter. We think, and at least public reports have it, that the B-21 Raider, the next generation stealth bomber, is being tested out there. But does it house aliens? There's been no evidence ever. In fact, in 2000, Russia did some overhead satellite imagery of the area and said they couldn't find any aliens. And that was a spoof for them, even Russia, to say it, with their spy satellites.
Right. So, well, it is such an interesting topic because people are convinced that there is stuff there. And something that I don't ever hear people talk about is that there is a reason for the government to be secretive about what is housed there. So can you kind of delve into that?
So again, you know, Russia did this overhead imagery. Clearly, Chinese and Russians and other countries have satellite imagery that can look down on the area and look at what's going on topside. But what they can't know is the new tactics that are being developed, either electronic counterjamming tactics that are being developed. There's actually 6 or 7 areas that they do different kinds of testing. There's recordings of a Sukhoi 27, which is not the most advanced, but it is a fairly advanced Russian fighter, doing dogfights with some of our older aircraft, trying to improve on our technology. And that's the key. If people are physically observing this, particularly foreign nationals, they could report back what they observe, and it could compromise U.S. security. And a lot of expenses, a lot of money goes into our stealth technology. And if it's stolen and our tactics are stolen, then we lose whatever advantages we gain.
And that's kind of a hard thing to accept because we have access to so much information. We want access to what's going on there, but it's wise for certain things to be secret because it's for the protection of our country.
Correct, and it's interesting. I mean, just to give one example, there was a foreign national country that would, back in the 80s, go visit aerospace, and they were allowed to. And then afterwards, we found out they had sticky gum on their shoes, and they were picking up the composite materials for our stealth technology. So they go to great lengths to find this out, and so it's important to keep these things secret so that we can maintain our advantage, what we have.
Right. And that's good words from you. Now, again, this topic just made us realize how popular UFOs and extraterrestrials are. How do we use this topic as a way to point people to truth?
How can we do that? Well, to me, it's interesting because there's a very small cadre of people who are dedicated and believe in that UFOs and extraterrestrials exist. And in our experience, in the book that I co-authored with Ken Samples and Hugh Ross, we talk about those issues and address it, particularly for those who are enthused and fascinated by this, because there clearly are, at least in the people that we've researched, open doors to the occult. And so it's important for Christians to become equipped to treat people. And they say 50% of Americans still either believe in UFOs or know someone that does. So every believer is going to come across several people that know or think about what they know about UFOs and extraterrestrials.
So every Christian believer, not believer in UFOs.
Correct. You're right. Christian
so
believer.
Believers meaning other believers.
Yeah, well, that's a good
sense.
point. Good sense. Yeah. So, and I think there's two things. I mean, and hopefully this doesn't happen, but if it does, I would say there's two things to worry about. One, the national security implications. I don't think anything violent will happen. People have asked that. I don't think the military will do that. However, it's a very remote place in the desert. There's very little housing. There's no public accommodations, toilets and the like, and water. It could be a disaster if people are not careful. And I think people are aware of it. A lot of them are. But I would just caution our viewers to be aware of that.
Right. Well, thank you so much for that. And again, if people want more information, they can check out your book with Hugh Ross and Ken Samples called Lights in the Sky and Little Green Men. It's such a great book. Thank you so much for that. If you'd like to hear more on this topic, again, check out the book Lights in the Sky and Little Green Men. You can search reasons.org for that. Now we're going to head over to Jeff Zwerink and see what he's up to with Give and Take.
Hello, Jeff Zwerink, and welcome again to Give and Take, the segment of our show where we explore how Christianity interacts with popular scientific ideas. Today, we're joined again by Dr. Hugh Ross, and we're going to ask the question, could aliens actually travel to Earth? Hugh, it's good to have you back on the show.
Thank you.
So there's this Area 51, which is a very popular, certainly pervasive thought that aliens have visited Earth and the governments are hiding it and keeping it there. So let's just, for the sake of this segment, let's assume that intelligent alien life exists out there. Could they actually travel to Earth?
Short answer, no.
Short answer, no. Okay, so what are some of the challenges, or why do you say, no, it can't be that way?
Well, interstellar space is a dangerous place. There's not a lot of stuff there, but if you're going to be moving at high velocities, it's going to damage your ship.
So presumably you need the high velocities just because space is really, really big?
Well, it's because you've got to go a long ways.
That's true.
And so, the idea of going warp 1 isn't going to work. In fact, the fastest you can go through interstellar space with beings as large as us without killing them and destroying your craft is about 1% the velocity of light.
Okay.
So if we're talking 300 light year travel distance, that's 30,000 years to get here.
Well, I mean, just to kind of put that in scale, the closest star to us is about 4 light years away.
Correct.
So if you travel at 1% the speed of light, it takes you 400 years to travel to the closest star. So it just gives you a sense. I mean, it really is fascinating how large space is. And so, okay, so we got to be able to traverse distances like that, which requires either really long times or very high speeds.
Yeah, they've done experiments on mice and rats where they expose them to the radiation that you would get if you're just outside Earth's magnetosphere. Mm-hmm. And what they discovered is within about 3 months, the digestive tracts of these animals gets destroyed. And their digestive tracts are really good analogies for our digestive tracts. Mm-hmm. And so you put people on board a spaceship and send them outside Earth's magnetosphere, which isn't very far away. I mean, even a trip to Mars would be out of the question.
It's actually even worse than that because, getting outside Earth's magnetosphere exposes you to more radiation, but it's even worse when you get outside the sun's magnetosphere as well. So
that's true because the sun protects us from a lot of cosmic radiation. So once you get out there, you're going to be exposed to that. And people say, well, can't they build an artificial magnetosphere? We can't even conceive of a technology that would make that possible. And so, and again, the size of the thing. What we do know about making a stable magnetosphere, you need a really big body. So if you got a spaceship the size of Earth, maybe it's feasible. Mm-hmm. Anything smaller, it's not going to work.
If you give humanity maybe a few thousand years to work on this, we're pretty creative folks. Maybe we could come up with something. Is it technologically possible to do that?
We are very intelligent and creative and technologically advancing. However, no matter what, we're subject to the laws of physics. We can't invent a technology that's going to do us any good that violates the laws of physics because we're constrained by the space-time dimensions and the laws of physics. Mm-hmm. And I think one thing that demonstrates that is Elon Musk's plan to send spaceships to the nearest star.
Okay.
He's aware of these difficulties caused by the laws of physics, and his team has determined the biggest spaceship we can send with any chance of survival to the nearest star, not a faraway star, but just the nearest star, the spaceship has got to be no bigger than 10 centimeters across. Moreover, they plan to send 1,000 of these spaceships that are 10 centimeters across, presuming that half of them will be destroyed by the particles in interstellar space.
So presumably they're talking about pretty high velocities to get them there in some reasonable amount of time.
We're talking 10 to 20% the velocity of light, which means you can get there, within a 20, 30-year.
Okay. And so in that, the problem you encounter when you're going that fast, apart from the radiation problems, is that anytime, now if you enter or collide with an interstellar piece of dust, the collision velocities are incredible, and they could just rip it apart and tear apart your ship.
Yeah, even the protons and neutrons you encounter are going to cause problems.
Right, and so it's nice that space is pretty sparse, but it's not that sparse.
If you send a small enough spaceship, you got a chance. Mm-hmm. But the idea that you or I could go, we're a lot bigger than 10 centimeters.
So do you think it's possible to send interstellar probes out to other planets or out to other stars and get information?
I think we can.
You think we can?
We can definitely send probes as long as we don't try to send life.
Okay.
Or maybe we could send a bacterium. Just don't send Jeff Zwirink because he's not going to make it.
Well, my understanding of sending the bacterium is anytime we send something out into space, we send a lot of that anyway.
It goes out at there anyway, right? The question is would it even survive? And the point is, even a bacterium is unlikely to survive a trip through interstellar space.
Yeah, it really is a pretty hostile environment. I know throughout, you look at the various sci-fi flicks that are out there, and space, aliens just are pervasive throughout the universe, and traveling is not that hard, but it really doesn't give an accurate picture of just how hostile an environment the universe is for space travel.
And we're not just talking interstellar space. We've yet to find a body outside of planet Earth where we could possibly survive. Mm-hmm. So, where are these things coming from? So I tend to agree with you. The idea of aliens traveling here, that's not going to happen. So Area 51 has nothing to do with that. That's not the government's covering up aliens. Again, physical aliens. If
right.
we're talking non-physical aliens, that's a different matter.
So, different question, just a brief answer to give people something to think about. Do you think God created life somewhere else?
That's possible.
And
we know it's extremely unlikely he created beings like us, just because we can't find any environments where that's even possible. But if we're talking a place where bacteria could exist, maybe even grass, yeah, I think that's within the realm of possibility.
Well, thanks, Hugh. I appreciate your comments. It really is, when you look at the popular culture, the idea that aliens are out there and they visited Earth seems just like it's got to happen. But when you look at the physics of it, it's really, really difficult. And so the idea that aliens have traveled here is likely just physically impossible. I would encourage you to go to reasons.org and check out 2 books that explore this topic that equip you to be able to talk about it well. Look for Hugh's book, Lights in the Sky and Little Green Men, and look for my book as well, Is There Life Out There? These will give you great resources to engage people that already want to talk about this fascinating topic and be able to share the gospel with them.
That does it for us this week. We hope that you enjoyed this show as much as I did, and it's going to help you share your faith.
Yeah, we hope that you've been fascinated by this topic, and be sure to subscribe to our show and find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at 2819 Show.
And if you want the podcast version of 2819, you can get us on Apple Podcasts, Google Play Music, and Spotify. Just search Reasons to Believe Podcast.
See you next week.